What is up, YouTube? This is Evan Magician 34, and this is your ninth and final episode of the Bolt Twister deck for Theme Deck Thursdays. This episode, instead of making my changes and telling you what I would put in, we're going to kind of look at the deck as a whole and kind of look in directions this deck can go in the future. I said from the outset, I'm not going to do this whole thing from start all the way to the finish myself by myself. We've gotten to a good and comfortable place with the deck, and now what we're kind of looking at is fine-tuning. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at cards that are still a little suspect and start making decisions about where we really want the deck to go. Now, if you've been playing along at home, you can definitely take this deck where you want it to go, do what you want to do. Think of these more as sort of guidelines than anything else. The first card that's really kind of suspect is Galvantula and, of course, Joltik. That's 4 slots of your Pokemon, and while he was appreciated early on, and he is sort of the theme deck Pokemon, like he is the poster child. He is the poster child of the deck. His playability in this format's really kind of questionable, and sometimes you kind of got to look at that and say, is this really what this deck needs to be, or have I kind of created something else that might be better around it? So that's something we got to ask. Do we really want to stay loyal to Galvantula, or do we want to drop him? I swore for the duration of this that I was definitely going to have to play him. But personally, if I were going to take this deck to my local to play and try to win a local tournament or something like that, I would probably be looking at dropping Galvantula, to be honest. Definitely suspect. Also, we have some supporters here that we still have one-ofs of. And we got to ask, okay, do these supporters really need to be in here at one of, or are these supporters we could maybe drop? Yeah, they're versus seeker targets, but we also kind of got to wonder, are they really always going to be useful? Colress and Pokemon Center Lady especially, I'm kind of wondering about. Shauna's not bad, she's a nice versus seeker target late in the game when N becomes rather unpleasant, and Juniper Miter might not necessarily be good, so Shauna can sometimes be useful. So these are cards kind of on our suspect list that we need to think about, and part of what we're thinking about is not only what we're taking out, but what we're thinking about putting in. Also suspect are our 1 copy of Evo Soda, which is somewhat questionable, especially if we drop Galvantula. I would say this would almost automatically drop if we drop Galvantula. And our 2nd copy of Professor's Letter. As our energy curve gets pretty heavily weighted toward the water side, and we seem to have a fair amount of energy in our deck anyway, we got to question if that 2nd letter wouldn't be better off as something different. We still have the other letter, and we can go search for it or whatever if we need to. More on that in a minute. But a lot of times we have our energy not only met, but we've sort of exceeded what we need energy-wise. So that makes us wonder if that might be something more practical to either control our opponent or accelerate ourselves. Finally, we're going to question Enhanced Hammer. We added this card ourselves, but the question is, are there enough matchups currently in the meta where this card is useful to justify its existence, or might it be better off as something else? We could still use Disruption, but maybe Disruption that works on every opponent, not just ones relying on special energy. So those are all cards we're going to have to kind of think about. Now, as far as add-ins, one thing that has kind of been the elephant in the room, so to speak, we've kind of danced around it but never actually said it directly, is Manectric EX. For one thing, if we were to drop Galvantula and Joltik, that's 4 slots. That could be 2 Manectric EX and 2 Mega Manectrics. And we could easily find room for a Manectric Spirit Link in there, say by replacing the Evo Soda. And then you could run in a guy who helps power up your Feraligators pretty quickly, and at the same time, that is to say the Mega can power them up pretty quickly by getting energies from the discard pile. But his overrun here on his basic Manectric EX form also helps set you up for KOs with Feraligator, which is amazing. Because he not only does he tag the bench Pokemon, but he hits the active, and this guy could even arguably take the place of Kyurem just because he does this for 1 colorless instead of having to do it for 1 colorless and a water energy very specifically. And of course he can also threaten heavy damage with Assault Laser. So that's something to think about. Of course, also, we might keep the Evo Soda if we put this guy in Mega Manectric in. That way we could just Evo Soda him, and we could still run the Spirit Link. Essentially, Spirit Link him, Evo Soda him, boom, get the Mega, keep playing. That would be nice, and that would thin our deck pretty aggressively, and that would be that's definitely something I wanted to do actually from the beginning of this deck. I wanted to keep it a little more playable, and I decided to go a different, more creative route. I thought Plasma Cure would be a little easier to get, so I kind of avoided this guy. But honestly, I think this guy pairs really well with Feraligatr and would be a very interesting, very viable deck. So there's definitely food for thought. Also, extra copies of Seismitoad EX are definitely worth considering. We got one right now, and say running 2 or 3 might be very nice. And especially if we're running in the Manectric, then we can afford to drop QREM, which gives us slots for this guy. In fact, Suicune doesn't necessarily belong, but I do like it as an Ultra Ball target and whatnot. So there's another thing that might go in. Now, as far as getting specific things, Skyla could be a great replacement for, say, Colress and Pokemon Center Lady, for example. Running in a couple of Skylas to get you your specific targets. This helps immensely with rare candy. So I would actually think that's one of the changes I would almost surely make for the future of this deck. And of course, this and Manectric Spirit Link would also be very nice if that's the direction you decide to go. Now, Crushing Hammer is another interesting option, and Enhanced Hammers could turn into this, and we could drop maybe a few of those other cards in order to turn them into Crushing Hammers. So we could run 3 to 4 of this as a means of slowing our opponents down whilst we're setting up and putting ourselves in a more advantageous position. So, food for thought there. And one last suggestion, we could run Muscle Band. It's not super necessary, and that's why I haven't added it to the deck. But if we find ourselves with 1 or 2 extra slots, this could be a nice card. There have been times, of course, when 20 extra damage would have meant the difference between a KO and not a KO. It's not a frequent or common occurrence, and that's why I didn't worry about it, but still, if you've got extra slots, that might be something nice you could do with them, and that might turn out to be really useful, especially now that we'll have access to Skyla. So, that is our Galvantula Bolt Twister theme deck, and that's it for Theme Deck Thursdays for this deck. Now, next week I'm going to announce what we're going to do for Theme Deck Thursdays in the future, but until then, I invite you to go ahead and comment down below as to what you might like to see on Theme Deck Thursdays in the future. Interesting ideas, decks you'd like, or maybe different ways of modifying theme decks, different creative approaches. So like I say, I've already made up my mind about what we're going to be doing, but more ideas are always nice because I can always use that in future Theme Deck Thursdays. And until next time, of course, like, comment, subscribe, and check out my channel for more Pokemon content.